nestled here in a little flat in Rome, Italia. I'll actually show it to you. It's not very cute. There's a lot of us sharing it. It's my parents and my two sisters, and it's cute, and well, it's like kind of funky cute. It's not the most aesthetic, but it's perfect for all of us. And we're here for 2 days, and then we fly out. Actually, no, we don't fly out. We take to sea on Saturday, and we board the Norwegian Epic cruise, and we will be at sea for 10 nights. Y'all, I am amazed. I got the cruise for, it was $1,000 for a private 1-room studio suite. And it's nice. I'm excited. Well, I'm excited to see what it looks like in person. So we'll see if the pictures lie, but the pictures were beautiful. And I just feel like this is such a good deal. We're going to Santorini, Athens, another beautiful remote island in Greece that I'd never heard of before, but I looked up the pictures and it's just stunning. We're going to Malta, Cannes, France. We're going to Florence, obviously, Sicily, Napoli, and back to Rome. And so I decided literally Thursday last week to book this. I don't have any regrets in my life. And I was thinking, I asked myself this question last week. I asked myself, who do I want to be remembered as by each one of my family members? Because each person perceives us differently. Every single person has a different experience with our brand. And brand is really the focal point of tonight's conversation. And for those of you who tune in often, you know that we talk about a bunch of different angles and nuances surrounding whatever the topic is. And so there's a lot to this conversation around brand in and of itself. The element of who do I want to be remembered by in terms of every single person, and what do I want them to say about me? Like if my dad was to give a eulogy for me, what would he say? If my mom was to give a eulogy, if my sister who's right beneath me would give a eulogy, if the sister oldest, 2 siblings removed from me would give a eulogy, what would she say? Every single person in our life has a different experience with us. And so much of that is shaped by their own neuroses, right? Their own neurological pathways and their own view of the world and the lens through which they see the world. And so when it comes to curating our brand, each one of us has this fundamental radical responsibility to do the work to curate our brand so that we're showing up in a consistent way. However, we cannot ever truly control the way we're perceived. And that's an interesting element with brand, because you can do everything right and even still have two different people in the exact same situation have 2 completely different experiences with you. And so then the question comes, well, what do I do? What do I do to ensure that people have this same experience of me, that they have the experience that I want them to have? And as I really sit with this, there's only so much that we can do. But at the same time, there's a lot. So I want to talk about what we can do to maintain and cultivate a strong brand. And also at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do, because at the end of it, we have to let go and be willing to have people who are repelled by our brand. Because a strong brand, every single one has lovers and haters. And in one sense, that's almost, you could say that's the definition of a strong brand, is when you come to the point where you demarcate someone and they effectively have to come to a decision, am I for you or am I against you? That's good. We actually need to get to that point. It's coming to this point. It's very similar in terms of trying to the point of winning or failing. If we're staying in the gray and we're never actually having this, hard win or hard loss and failure, being able to allow for us to fall forward allows us to get closer at the end of the day to our goal and to our target. But if we're afraid of failure and only striving for success, then we're going to make such small incremental steps, because when it's reliable and predictable success, it's also very familiar and very known. And so we're never going to be able to create something so new and thus in the unknown that allows for something that could really catapult us leaps and bounds further and faster as a result. And so in this whole element of examining our brand, there has to be at its core a letting go like in tandem with assuming radical responsibility to ensure that we're doing the work, to put in our reps, to ensure that we're showing up as we want to be known, as we say that we want to be known, because there's a big difference between what we say we want and how we live. There's usually a disparity if we're not living with intention between principle and practice. So we need to ensure that those two are meeting. So let's talk. So in terms of cultivating our personal brands, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks because I'm so excited about this. I'm going to be hosting a workshop for the first time ever. All of the training and more formal education I have done has been under other brands for other, traffic and conversion, speaking on stage there, or teaching at Digital Marketer, or with other partners of mine who have been running their own summits and their own courses. I've supported and created tracks for those. And so I'm super excited to do something of my own accord. I'm going to be hosting it October 30th, and I'll be sending out more details soon. But I'm excited to dive into that day specifically. We're going to be hosting 3 consecutive workshops through the end of the year, because it is so important that we take the time to really answer this question of how do I want my brand to be represented? Who do I want to be known as? And frankly, who do I want to be even just for myself? Who do I want to be for my family? Because as we were talking about earlier, my dad might have a eulogy of me, and my employee is also going to have a eulogy of me, and my client is going to have a eulogy of me. What's the through line? What is their experience of me? Where is their consistency? Where is their disparity? Where is there just a difference because they don't know me that well, right? With each level of person, they're further removed, right? But if you consistently are seeing these very demarcated in terms of descriptions, or even just impressions and experiences with someone, that for me is cause for concern and cause for us to go inward and analyze, who am I trying to be for these people versus am I actually being who I am? There's a trying, there's a should. I said earlier about doing something the right way. Mercer was on the other day, and he was talking about fundamentally we have to do away with this idea of right versus wrong, because in operating in that box, we're never really going to allow for creativity. And at the same time, we're never truly present because we're fixated on the next 5, 15, 20 seconds from now of doing the right thing versus being here in the present moment and just enjoying it for what it is. We're actually not trying anymore. We're being here in the now. And so with this whole concept of analyzing who we are at our core and how do we want to show up as our brand, there's a couple of different aspects that we can look at to ensure that we actually have the fundamentals in place. It's like building a house. And one of those really truly is our values. Analyzing what are those core pieces that effectively, I think of our values as almost like the guardrails of a bowling alley. You put the guardrails up and you ensure that the ball, when you shoot the ball, it doesn't go off into the gutter, but it just kind of helps keep you on the straight and narrow towards your goals, which are the bowling pins. So in this analogy, our values, depending on their strength, they really can serve as those guardrails that are so necessary when we come into those moments where, man, it is so uncomfortable or so difficult or painful. Maybe there's brokenness there. Even just today, I'm in here in Rome, and I landed this morning. My flight was delayed last night. And I messaged saying to someone, I'm so sorry, I think I'm going to be late. And it ended up, I was 15 minutes late, but then my Wi-Fi wasn't working. So they said that they didn't want to reschedule, and I completely understand that. And so there's this tension in literally physically in my body where I'm like, oh, man, I hate that they had that experience with me. I hate that if they were to write a eulogy of me, like, what would they say? And that's really important that I sit with that discomfort, because there's growth there. There's growth the more that we sit in the discomfort of whatever the reality is, because the reality is that I didn't plan far enough ahead. I knew that there was a slight chance that something God forbid, goes wrong, I gave myself 2 hours to get to my hotel. And I there's a couple of things I could have done different. And thank God for people who are gracious. I can't always predict and control everything. And if we refuse to sit in the discomfort of someone else's experience with us, we actually may miss out on an opportunity for growth. And is such an important conjunction, because their experience does not mean that that's the final word. We also have to sit in our experience. In my experience, I have a kind of a different narrative than they might have on their experience. But man, I just sitting with empathy in theirs, I'm like, man, that really sucks to sit on the phone and wait for 15 minutes. And it turns out that they moved a meeting here. I think he moved a meeting or two to be on the show. And so it's just like, I hate that. Like that's such a shame. That's not the experience I want to give. And so now, as I sit with the discomfort of that, what change am I going to make as a result? And that's the piece of when we really can let go of the ideal of, I want to be perceived a certain way. Then I can go in and listen to the truth of that person's experience and learn from it and adjust as necessary, or even just say, you know what, I think I actually want to partner with people who have flexibility, because that's a core value of mine. Well, now what I need to do moving forward is I actually need to make sure I say that and set the expectation, because every single brand, especially one that's strong, every single brand sets the expectation for the experience that the person's going to have with them. And so if flexibility is a core value of mine, I need to articulate that. And actually next week while I'm on the cruise, I asked my EA to let the folks on the Knowing Show know, like, hey, by the way, I'm going on this cruise. It does feel like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I know it's not ideal. We have our show. I anticipate it's all going to be fine. And Wi-Fi might be a little spotty. Are you okay with that, or would you rather reschedule? So this was a really, really good learning example. So this is why our values serve as guardrails, because what they do is, if a value of mine, which it is emotional intelligence, the first half of emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware of, to understand and express one's own emotions. So that's my job. But then the second half of that is the ability to sit with empathy and a judiciousness with another person, to handle that interpersonal relationship with empathy and wisdom. And so the first half of emotional intelligence, which is a core value of mine, helps me sit in my experience. And the second half of that value helps me engage with others. It's guided by empathy and with wisdom. So this one value of emotional intelligence almost turns into this like unfolding of 4 or 5 different values: self-awareness, communication, because it's the third part of that is, the ability to be aware of, understand, and express one's own emotions. So there's 3 parts of my own radical responsibility when it comes to emotional intelligence. And then the back half of that is empathy and wisdom in interpersonal relationship handlings. So there's a nucleus of values derived and kind of under the guise of this one concept of emotional intelligence, all of which serve as guardrails. And I've got a few others there that also serve as values for me. But man, that is like a North Star that guides me forward, keeps me focused, and forces me to contend with the truth when I have the ability and opportunity to sit with someone else in their experience, extend empathy, and be like, oh, I hate that was your experience. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go make real change as a result. Even just the other day, I was on a call with someone I'm seeing right now. I love that. And they had, I said something and I went back and I thought about it and I was like, I actually got emotional. I was like, I'm so sorry I said that. Like I didn't, that was hurt Christene, like little Christene was coming out. And I got tears in my eyes as I was thinking about it. And I was leaving them a voice message and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like it wasn't, in one sense, it wasn't that big of a deal. And when I really sat in empathy with their experience, it was so, I felt, it's like hard to put into words, y'all, when we really care about someone and really love them, when we sit with them truly in their experience, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you felt that way, and let me not self-abandon, let me also be, aware and understanding and expressing of my own experience there, because and this is a really, really important distinction. Codependency creeps in to the latter half of emotional intelligence when you're only experiencing interpersonal relationships with empathy and judiciously, right? And in one sense, can you even engage judiciously with wisdom if you're in the codependence area? So this is actually fun to think about. Wisdom in and of itself protects us from codependency when we exist in empathy. So if we were just to exist with empathy in our interpersonal relationships, and sans wisdom, sans truth, it's going to be dangerous for us. But because it's empathy with wisdom, we can really enter into their experience and know ours as well, know kind of the objective reality. Because what's so wild when we really think about this, I said earlier that we view each other through a lens, and I can cultivate myself, grow and heal in so many ways. Yet if someone has a lens that is fundamentally broken, or broken in terms of like they haven't healed certain parts, they're going to view me and view you in a way that is almost irreparable, because they have and are unwilling to do the work of healing that. I've been reading this book, Letting Go by David Hawkins. And the more I'm reading this, y'all, the more I'm realizing, I want to get my book. It's in the other room. I read this earlier today while I was on the plane. Effectively, when we get to this point of acceptance, so what he talks about is how emotions have numerical values assigned to them. And the kind of below, I think it's below 200, are all more so negative emotions. It's pride and resentment and ego, shame. Each one of those is below 200. But once you get to 200, 200 is courage. And above that is acceptance. And as you kind of rise in the emotional, honestly, almost like emotional equity of energy levels, as you increase, it's like, wow, like I actually have so much power to just change my lens. That person who's bothering me, man, I get to tweak my lens or put up a boundary and not be around that person. But we have so much power. And so if every single one of us was to exist in relationships with this fundamental, radical approach to ourselves and our own responsibility, that person really doesn't have power over us in a way that so often drives pain and drives hurt. So it really, that question of what are your values holds so much more importance than, oh, everyone go around the table and spout off a value. It's no, this fundamentally drives the way I view people, the way that I hold myself accountable. If someone comes to me like today, when I messed up and was late for my Knowing show, that holds me to a standard where that person might not, he doesn't even need to say anything. I can feel the weight of my actions and the consequence thereof and be like, man, that I'm so sorry about that. And that doesn't make it better, but I'm doing it because of who I want to be, not because I'm trying to make him feel a certain way towards me. And y'all, that's really, really important. Why do we do the thing that we're doing? What's the why behind it? Are we doing it out of manipulation, or are we doing it out of authenticity? And when we think about, earlier I was talking about, empathy and wisdom together constitute the second half of emotional intelligence when we're handling interpersonal relationships. If we are not showing up with the first half of the emotional intelligence aspect, which is being aware of, understanding, and expressing our own emotions, if we're missing that, we're actually not showing up authentic to begin with. And therefore, man, empathy can so easily turn into manipulation. It is a dangerous thing. It's dangerous for the other person because it can be codependent, where I'm needing them to give me an emotional reaction and I'm so dependent on that. Or I can actually use empathy as a weapon against them. So both are very, very dangerous. So both parts of emotional intelligence are so critical to keep us safe in our own boundary lines of our values. there's this verse, Psalm 16:11. It says, "The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance." And I just love that verse. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Our values are boundary lines. They're boundary lines to keep us safe. They're boundary lines to keep other people safe. And when I say keep other people safe, it's really like safe from me. Because what can end up happening, and I've talked to, honestly, y'all, I've talked to a lot of men and women, both, some who have been divorced, some who are in just really deep emotional hurt with their partner, where they have not established any semblance of boundaries and have been the sacrificial lamb. And at the time, man, pat on the back for being so great. But now the partner's paying the emotional price because they never said what they needed and wanted in the first place. It is so important that we are leading with authenticity, that first half of emotional intelligence, knowing what we need, and also that second half of empathy and wisdom. Because then we can express, hey, this is how I'm viewing the world. This is what my current lens is. And what's so cool about this whole, the book Letting Go by David Hawkins, he puts words to a lot of, reading him is how I felt when I read Jordan Peterson for the first time. I'm like, oh, he's putting into words like thoughts and musings and reflections that I haven't really had a category for. And he just says it so simply. If we're letting go of their perception of us, and we're letting go of our current perceptions, and we're saying, hey, this is a lens that I'm viewing this situation through. I actually recognize it might not be the most optimal. Can you help me? Y'all, I find that a couple different phrases have been really helpful for me in relationships. One has been, I feel embarrassed. That's like reducing me all the way down to the bare bones. I am like thoroughly stripped naked and I'm like waving the white flag, asking for help. Another one is just saying, I really need help right now. Like, I actually know that I'm stuck. And I was talking to someone the other day and about their marriage, and we were talking about how when we feel emotionally stuck, we kind of have these two decisions. One, we can just dig our hole deeper because we already started. We feel embarrassed. Or we can say, I actually feel stuck. Like having a language for that feeling of like, I don't even feel ready to move out of this, but I actually want to, because I know that right now I'm not in alignment with my values. I know that I'm not in alignment with my ideal. I don't really know what to do, and I'm so upset, but I don't want to stay here. Like, here is not good, and I need help. And so obviously this is why we can have therapists. But when it comes to circling back to brand, y'all, the way that we show up with our clients, the way we show up with our team is I guess it's like saying a reduced version of how we show up at home. How we show up at home, man, if you want to know who you really are, who are you when you walk in the door? How do your kids feel about you? How does your wife or husband feel about you? And that, man, you can be going out and saving the world, and who are you with the people who see you the closest? That's really the question. So when we do a brand analysis of ourselves, it's not just looking at who we are in the professional world, but who are we with those closest to us who have, honestly, probably a much louder microphone than if our employee or client was to pick it up and say their speech about us at the end of our lives. So as I was thinking last week about what would I want each person in my family to say about me, I actually realized some areas for growth. And that was a really, really good question of what do I want my eulogy from every single person in my family to say, because my relationship with each one is different. And so now let me take strategic action to make changes so that eulogy can be true. Let me even convey that to them, because this isn't a one-sided relationship. Let me actually share, like, I actually would love to have this type of relationship with you. What do you need from me in order to have that? And where do you think I need to change? I think I have some ways, because y'all, the health of us as an individual shows up in the workplace. And man, the more we eliminate those mindsets and those narratives that are getting in the way for us on a personal level, on an interpersonal level, man, once those floodgates break open, once we learn how to have an abundance mindset, man, finances come in. Once we learn how to truly give without needing something back, Joe Polish is known as like the biggest giver. And he has connections out the wazoo because he was just giving. But we have to look and analyze those parts. It's like actually one of my clients was talking about this, the inner architecture, and I love this concept. We were working on a blog post for him earlier today. Absolutely brilliant. Our inner architecture is effectively creating I'm trying to say what I'm visualizing. It's like the circuits running within me, all the circuits, all the programming is ultimately what comes out. The way I engage with money, the way I engage with clients, the way I engage with employees, the way I engage with partners, the way I show up in those networking rooms, the way I show up online for a podcast, the way that I show up on stage, the way that I show up when I go over to my sister's house, the way I show up when I go to my other sister's house, when I go to my parents' house. Every single person is seeing a version of me based on this inner structure. So therefore, if I tweak the inner structure, the output is going to be tweaked as well. So y'all, this question of what is my brand and who am I and who do I want to be and how do I want to show up online and what is the ideal? In order to answer that question, we need to address, well, how am I currently showing up? And what's the distance? What do I actually need to address now in order to ensure that I can be on my way to get there? But we cannot start our journey until we say, okay, well, this is how I am today. Why is that? Oh, it's because of that back there. All right, let's get rid of that. Okay, now I can get to that next step. Now I can actually be free. So when we're talking about brand, values cannot ever be too underrated because everything you do is predicated in a belief. Everything you do is predicated in the lens through which you see the world. Every decision, financial, professional, personal, everything in between. Every single thing in your life is predicated on your values. And so we have to start there. Who are you and why? And what needs to go from the past in order to break you free to then move into your ideal? And then from there, it's okay. What's your voice? What's your style? How do you actually want to show up visually? How do you actually want to carry yourself? You know, I was talking with another woman the other day and she mentioned, we were actually at the knowing retreat and she mentioned to us like, I feel like my shoulders physically hunched down. And so we talked about buying that little thing that goes on her spine and beeps when she rolls her shoulders down. There is something so powerful. Cody Sanchez was talking about this on an interview she did. Stephen Bartlett and Alex Ramosi and a few other folks. The way you dress, it says so much about who you are. So every single part of us, in order for us to really analyze what is my proprietary brand? What do I want it to be? What can it be? What is the potential of this brand of mine? I love it. Guys, this is our responsibility. We have every single bit of power to cultivate it exactly as we want it to be. So October 30th, mark your calendars. We're going to be sending out more information. If you want more information, send me a DM and I will send you the details. But I'm super excited about this. We're going to be just diving all the way in, and then we'll be having 2 more before the end of the year to really set all of us up for heading into 2026 right. I hate living in reaction. It's time we be proactive and take control of our lives so that we can actually reach our potential rather than being tethered to the past. So with that, I will